All right, whenever you're ready.
Great. Good evening and welcome to the Pat Conroy Center. I'm Mary Martha Green, the author of The Cheese Biscuit Queen Tells All and The Cheese Biscuit Queen Kiss My Aspic. And I would like to introduce my special guest tonight, who is Michael McGandy, who is the director of USC Press and is my publisher. And we've been working on a little project down here today. So thank you all for coming. I'm excited about this. Welcome to our nonprofit Pat Conroy Literary Center. Promises to be a lively and engaging conversation around Charleston author Paul Attaway's newest novel, Blood Rivalry, a Southern novel of power, deceit, and rebirth. It sounds kind of like being at the State House. This evening, Paul will be in conversation with our dear friend TJ Velasco, retired educator, docent at the Pat Conroy Center, and a member of our board of directors. And Paul will have his books available for signing after his presentation, and I'm sure we'll be glad to sit at Pat's desk and sign them for y'all. Paul Attaway was born and reared in the Atlanta, Georgia area, met his wife Lynn, who is with him tonight, in college at Georgetown University, so you know they're both very smart. And they now live in Charleston, South Carolina. After college graduation, Paul received his law degree from the University of Georgia Law School in 1988, and I would make a slam about that, except one of my godchildren just finished the University of Georgia, so we won't say anything about Bulldogs. Paul and Lynn then married and settled in Phoenix, Arizona, where they raised 3 children. Paul was a lawyer for 2 years before moving into the business world, and over the next 30 years, Paul started several successful businesses before retiring from this life and moving to Charleston, South Carolina. Paul began his writing career after moving to Charleston. When Paul and Lynn aren't spending time together or being grandparents, Paul is working on his next book, Substack posts, or guiding walking history tours around Charleston. We're thrilled to welcome Paul to the Pat Conroy Literary Center. TJ Velasco taught English literature and composition for 34 years in Cape May County, New Jersey. In 2010, he earned the Cape May County Teacher of the Year and was a finalist for State Teacher of the Year. TJ is active in the community and continues to mentor the next generation as a college application coach, helping students translate their unique experiences into compelling admissions narratives. He is currently working on his first book, A Guide for Teachers to Reclaim Their Purpose in Peace. TJ has called Beaufort home for the last 2 years, and please welcome me in joining Paul and TJ. Thank you. Go Bulldogs. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I didn't know to start off, it was interesting because I'm going to come by your series backward and then go back to the top to read it. However, as I'll bring out, it didn't matter. There was enough in here that it flowed and I completely understood those background pieces. So
that is a challenge when writing a series.
And I was going to ask that, did you intend to make it so you were able to keep it as a standalone if somebody just stumbled on this?
Yes, when I wrote my first book, I had no idea there'd be a book 2 or a book 3. So it was only about halfway through book 1 that I said, there's more than one story here, and I began to think about writing a series. And then after I finished book 1 and began to work on the second one, I then began to think hard about, what does it take to write a series? Because you don't want to put stumbling blocks out. You got to read the first one. So no, I was very conscious of that. In writing the third book in such a way that you give them the background as to who the characters are, what makes up the characters, but do so that you didn't ruin the surprises that you put in the first couple of books. So it was a conscious effort.
And it worked well because
Thank you.
There was just enough to understand motivation, to understand why they were behaving, and we'll get to the rivalries that kind of play out throughout the book. Thus the title, as we go through. You stumbled upon what one of my questions was when you set out on the first book.
Right.
And I guess at what point in the writing did you realize there's more than one? Like when you sat down to write Blood in the Low Country, that was what you were going to write.
Right.
When in that process did you realize, I have a lot more here? And how did you go about figuring out what to table and what to include?
I think I kind of figured out that there was more than one book in the first book when I got to about page 500 of the first book. And I realized, no. All of a sudden I'm going in this direction. And this was my first. I've always written throughout my career. Whatever it is I've done, I've always been the principal writer of whatever I was involved with. So writing was a discipline, but telling a story was a different skill set. And so I was learning as I went along. So I was reading books on how to write books, blogs on how to write books. The importance of backstory, not too much, not too little. So the first book, we have two brothers, and we meet them when they're in high school. And so as the story was developing, it just sort of was developing along the lines of the youngest brother, Walker. And so, but I couldn't forget Eli, because Eli is a big part of it. But then as it developed, I said, hold on, wait a minute, Eli needs his own book. And so kind of when I got to that point is when I realized, okay, I have a series here. I have a series. There's an event that takes place in book one, kind of like throwing a huge rock into a lake, and it just ripples. And so I realized then that this singular event is going to impact the lives of these two young men, these two boys, as they become grown men throughout the rest of their lives. And so that was sort of the genesis of books 2 and then book 3.
And in book 3, you really watch Walker trying to find his world.
Find his footing. Yes. So we have, it's so hard to talk about your books without giving away the big.
I know, that's what I'm trying to.
I know, it is a big surprise.
I have huge notes that
Yes.
say, don't reference from
Yes.
this page on at all.
Spoiler alert. So the first, but yes, I mean, basically, without, the back jacket, I'll tell you what's on the back of the book. We do have this family. They live in Charleston. We have parents, Monty and Rose, and they have 2 boys. And Eli is the oldest boy, but he is the product of the mother and her first husband. And so Walker, the youngest boy, is their child. So we have a kind of a blended family, whatever the word would be, and we have a rivalry between these 2 boys. But events happen that let's just say, kind of pull this family apart, and we learn about. And actually, the first book is as much about the parents as it is the 2 boys. And then the second book is about how this event, there's a murder in the first book. It's not glorified, it's off scene, there's no gratuitous violence. But this murder is what kind of rips several families, obviously the family of the young woman who's been killed, rips their families apart. And so you kind of learn to see how it is these families react when they're put under this extraordinary pressure. And you see the character arc. How do these characters change when this bomb goes off in their lives? And so the first book really sort of, it's how it affects all the families. And the second book, Eli's Redemption, is specifically on Eli. And then this third book, the one that you read, really focuses in on Walker and how he had to deal with everything that happened.
So along that vein, and one of the things that I kind of wrestled with looking at Walker was where his motivation comes from in taking on a very difficult case as a lawyer, but is it altruistic? Is it defensive from the past? So where do you see his motivations coming from in his behaviors?
Okay, well, it's very interesting because I wrote the first draft, or actually probably more like the 3rd draft, and I sent it off to the editor. And the editor comes back and he says, I like the story, it's got real potential. And he goes, but frankly, I like the bad guy better than I like Walker. And that's part of a challenge. It's easy to make bad guys interesting. It's a little bit more difficult to make the good guy, the hero, an interesting character. You don't want to make him too good. I mean, I think that's one reason why we like the anti-hero, the fallen hero, because you can make him more interesting. So no, I had to give him the motivation, what was driving him to take on these cases, and that frankly were uphill battles.
Right.
And what was driving him was that because of the events that we learn about in the first book, he was living entirely in his older brother's shadow, to the point where he saw himself a prisoner of this story. Small town, events happen, the book opens at the, what was it, the 15th year
That's our high school reunion.
And then everyone's still talking about the shootout in the swamp.
Yep.
And he's like, I can't escape this story. I can't escape my older brother. And so he then seeks out ways to carve out his own identity. And that is his character arc. He does everything on his own. He resists all help. He takes on more than any person could ever do. And then, in the end, he has to go and ask for help.
And that was definitely an interesting, and it's interesting because when you say your editor was more attracted or more interested in the bad guy in a sense,
right.
he comes right at the beginning as well because he's one of the ones who brings up the shootout in the swamp. How would you look at?
Yeah.
How would you look at? Was he? Do you think, as you wrote it, was he ever redeemable? Because there's a point in action where something happens with him, and I wondered though if, and it's interesting that you say you keep your murders off screen. We'll come back to that.
Right.
Where
Yeah, for that one.
I wonder if he could have.
I thought long and hard about it. Okay, so in the first two books we have two brothers, Eli and Walker, and I like to say their family was dysfunctional, lowercase d.
Mm-hmm.
In the third book, Blood Rivalry, we meet this other family, and the father, Colin Dunsmore.
The Conroy family.
Colin is a bad guy.
Yes.
And Colin has two sons, Johnny and Randall. And they are, that fruit didn't fall too far from the tree. They are like, they're not good guys. They're not good guys. And so I was thinking, okay, are they redeemable? And so I tried to make them a little bit empathetic.
And I definitely could see that. And there was
Because-
that's why I wondered whether there was
Yeah.
a point.
I think I ended up making Randall redeemable.
Mm-hmm.
But Johnny wasn't. I just left Johnny out there. He was just too lost.
And I thought it was nice too that you brought up you structure the book very uniquely. I'm going to kind of come to that because that's going to be in that first chapter. Because the book is structured with each chapter kicking off. You can see all the time periods that are going to be in the book.
Yeah.
And then it's highlighted the year. And there's really not too many chapters that go back to Colin the Father, which is the 48 to 58.
Correct. There's basically it's
The
part
opening,
two.
yeah. Well, they're at the book
It
open,
opens,
and
right.
then in part two.
Right.
And so, what was your thought first in structuring the book
Yeah.
that visibly that way?
Well, when I sit down to write a story, the first thing I try to do is figure out, okay, what is the story?
Okay.
I'm trying to come up with a compelling story. And then I try to figure out, okay, how am I going to tell the story? Because I do say, if someone says, Paul, what do you write? I say, I write suspense thrillers wrapped inside a Southern family drama. Okay, so they're suspense thrillers. I want them to be page turns. I want you to get to the end of a chapter and go, I gotta go to bed, but you want to find out what happened. So that's what I'm trying to do. So a big part of it is how am I going to tell the story? Okay, so we have events that happened in the past that affect the future.
Mhm.
This is not a novel idea. People have been doing this for some time. But that is a big part. Events in the past are just sitting there, just like little bombs that were set with a little clock, and the bomb goes off 30 years later. So I have to be able to go back and tell the things that happened in the past. And so, again, first, second, third draft, there was this back and forth. It was a bit frenetic. It was kind of like, I don't know what's going on. And so here's my first reader, my wife. She's the first reader, and she's reading, and she's like, I gotta be honest with you, I'm kind of having a hard time keeping track of this. She was reading a book, a historical fiction, I forget what it was, and she said, you might find this interesting. And this particular author had, at the top of each beginning, the first page of each chapter, did what I did, because their book did the same thing, it was bouncing back and forth, and so I said, brilliant. And so I copied that. Or what was it, someone says, good writers copy, great writers steal. So I copied it. And so that putting the date, the time frame in which a chapter took place, I did that in the hopes that, okay, the reader is gonna right out of the gate, go, okay, this next scene is happening in this time frame, and then have to read into the third or fourth page to kind of figure out where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So that was why I did that. The first chapter in there where we start off with the bad guy,
Right.
Colin, I ended up making that the first chapter. The second chapter used to be the first chapter. I ended up putting that in there because I kind of felt like I had to grab the reader.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to grab the reader to where they go, okay, who is this guy? Because, and then you don't meet him again for another 80 pages.
I was gonna say it was 100 pages
Yeah,
before I
it's
saw
100
him again.
pages, yeah, it's a long gap. I think those chapters moved around so much, I just finally arrived on, this was the order that I think would capture a reader, as opposed to, if I wait all the way to chapter 2 to introduce the bad guy,
Mhm.
that's almost too late to introduce the bad guy. Not chapter 2, part 2 of the book, which is chapter 13. It was almost too late to introduce the bad guy. So I introduced him right out of the gate. And then, of course, you've read the book.
Right.
When we meet him again, it's kind of a wow moment.
Well, and that was my other question there was, when you look at, so on your website you talk about the discussion on nature versus nurture and how that plays in.
Right.
And when you look at, and Johnny's life, like where,
Right.
does he have any, because it seems like Colin has his life, his father has his life
Yes.
completely planned.
Completely planned.
I mean,
Right.
and
Right.
for everyone in here, it's a political piece
Right.
where he has how he is going to ascend
Right.
from South Carolina to Washington.
Yeah, the bad guy wants his son to be in the White House. And he becomes the governor of South Carolina, and the father wants him to become the next president. And the book takes place in the 1990s, so no one can say that I'm writing about a particular political person today. This was taking place in the 1990s. It's purely fiction.
Was that conscious setting it in the 90s for any other reason? I had a couple questions
No,
about
it
that.
wasn't. I didn't set it in the 90s for that reason. I set it in the 90s because my first book took place in the 1970s.
So that had it set up.
So I had these stakes in the ground from the first book as to when they were born. So I said, okay, I had to count out, and I'm getting up to given his age and the climb he would have made to become from a state senator to become governor, I'm in the 1990s. So that's how I ended up in the 1990s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there was a piece in your book that I really got a kick out of, because when they have a lot of meetings, certain meetings they don't want to be very public and want people to see.
Right.
So they meet at a place in Charleston, Salty Mike's.
Oh yeah, Salty Mike.
And I
It's a
only
real
know-
life place.
It is, and I know this because I have friends who met at Salty Mike's and will tell you, so it was interesting reading it in the 90s, it's not what it used to be.
Well, I wasn't there in the 90s. Today it's a dive.
But they said it's cleaned up. So like
Oh,
in the
it was
90s,
really
it would
a
have
dive.
really been a dive.
Well, it's considered, okay, so we've been visiting since 2010. There's a restaurant above,
Mhm.
and then there's Salty Mike's below. It was in the last year purchased by a large
Yes.
company that has spiffed it up. I have not been to Salty Mike's in a while, but we've been to the restaurant upstairs, and they have, the food's still great, but the contour is a little bit too
Are you
neat.
talking about the city marina?
Yes.
Mhm.
The
Yes.
variety.
Yep.
The
I was
variety.
there in the 90s. I researched
Yeah. No, but it was funny because my friends who,
In the last year
Met
or
there.
so, this has happened.
Yes.
Yes, but in the 90s, it was a real dive bar from what I was.
so then that poses a question. How did you write about, what research went into writing about Charleston in the 90s when you weren't there at the time?
Well, there's two. Google,
Okay.
and we've been visiting now since 2010, we've been living there since 2020, so I've just gotten to know people.
Mhm.
And I'll just go, hey, you grew up here, where would you have gone? And they go, oh, we would have gone here, we would have gone here. So I have friends who grew up there who can give me, who can say, no, that never would have happened. No, that place didn't exist at the time. But at the end of the day, if you want to try to find out when a restaurant opened, you just Google it. You just find it, So I have no idea how people did, well, I know how they did it. To do research on a book before we had an internet Oh my goodness. It was much harder.
Well, you said you interviewed people, you talked to people who
I
were
did.
from here and who had been
Yes.
here.
Yeah, but if, I mean, just to do research that would take you to a library, if your town didn't have a sufficient library, you then had to go to a bigger town to find a bigger
Mhm.
library. That's a much more difficult task.
And I will add for the people who were here, and where do I have it set up? It's a different color. And this won't spoil anything in the book. But about 3/4 of the way through the book, I'm just gonna read a real quick passage because I think people will appreciate it. And you may know what's coming the minute I set into it. Single and attractive, they turned heads wherever they went. Blythe was wearing a simple white dress by Anne Klein. The shoulder pads delivered a regal air, and the blood blue belt accented her thin waist and ample bust. They each took a glass of rosé from the table and stepped to the side to survey the crowd and pick out where they wanted to sit. "Who's that man talking to Pat Conroy?" asked Blythe in a whisper. "That's Randall Dunsmore."
Yeah.
And I thought it was very funny when I got that far, knowing I was interviewing here, that Pat has having a book signing.
Pat, I forgot he had an appearance. Yes, that scene takes place at the Charleston Library Society, which is on King Street. And so these characters were meeting, and so yeah. And I had to come up with who could have been the author. No, we'll just make it Pat Conroy.
I loved it when I hit it. I thought there was two funny wow moments, and I'll save the other for another piece.
And nothing's changed at the Charleston Library Society. That's all the bikes may have changed, but
Yeah.
that's the same.
As a male author,
Mm.
you had a substantial number of female characters who were in significant, prominent, important, and had huge roles.
Yep.
You know, I look at Isabel, Dixie, I'll say Blythe, who had many names,
Yeah.
and Rebecca.
Yeah.
How difficult was it writing a female's voice and creating that?
Well, I have a mother, I have a wife, I have 2 daughters.
Okay.
I like to say I'm an equal opportunity employer. I have male characters who you're going to really go, that sounds like a person I'd like to meet. And I have male characters who are the spawn of Satan. And then I like to say the same thing about my female characters. I have female characters that you're going to go, wow, what an extraordinary person. I have other female characters that go, I want to rip that woman's head off.
I had those feelings.
And so, you know, it's human nature. I mean, I don't know that it's me. I mean, I feel like I can write a female character to a point. It's harder for me to write like in a deep third person limited. It's harder for me to get into that character's head without running the risk of being too stereotyped.
Okay.
I mean, I have to admit my limitations, but I don't, I mean, we've all met strong, you know, women. You know, I'm married to a strong woman. So there is a, you know, in Blood Rivalry, you have a scene or two where Walker and Isabel, Walker is married to Isabel, and they're playing dominoes, having a conversation. Well, that's one of the things that my wife and I enjoy doing. Before we go out to dinner, we'll sit down, we'll have a drink, and we'll play dominoes, and then we'll go out and have dinner. And so, you know, that kind of banter, you know, that you find in there is something that, you know, we have all the time. So I just say it's based on real life experiences.
Then I will compliment you because I really saw her character as being his North Star.
Absolutely.
Every time he seemed to veer off.
Absolutely. Isabel is his rock.
Exactly.
Isabel is his
And in
the
fact,
first 2 books, I'll just interject. There's just a character I just adore in the first 2 books.
Yes.
That doesn't, you know, just getting too on in age, doesn't get into the 3rd book, but she's such a great female
Yes.
character.
Yeah, Mrs. Babcock.
Mrs. Babcock, she's
Yes.
fabulous.
She is great.
and I will
You
say,
do a good job writing women, I think.
I was impressed by it. That's why I wanted to ask you that question, because I found them believable from having a wife and 2 daughters, a wife and a daughter and 2 granddaughters, like seeing how all that plays out. And I will say that really, without giving anything away at the end, it is Isabel who opens the end of the book, like really opens up that last piece.
Isabel's critical.
Yes.
Absolutely. And a quiet.
In a not aware of what she's doing necessarily,
Yeah.
but
Just
making it happen.
Yep.
So I was impressed by that. When I emailed you, I said I was going to bring this up because I'm always fascinated as it plays in. One of the features in your book is Ecclesiastes. Every part opens up with a passage.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I had actually just finished studying the book of Ecclesiastes and reading a book on it, and so I'm writing this book. I'm writing my book, and I'm reading the book of Ecclesiastes, and you know, as a writer, I'm always got my eye out for a good epithet, something to put at the beginning of a chapter, and so every now and then I'll, oh, that's a good one, I'll save it for something. So I'm just writing about these, we have these two families, and ambition is a big part of the lives of both of these families. And so I like, again, we have the dysfunctional family lowercase d, and we have the Dunsmore's dysfunctional uppercase d, you know, bold and underlined. And there's ambition running through both families. Some of it is healthy ambition, and some of it is unhealthy ambition. So we've got that. So then you look at the book of Ecclesiastes, written by Solomon, the wealthiest, wisest man to have ever lived. And yet he's in this book, in the book of Ecclesiastes, and everything is vanity, everything is vapor, everything is mist. What does it all mean? Why do we do all these things? And so we have Walker, who's constantly trying to carve out his identity. And then you've got Colin Dunsmore, he wants to put his son and just all the machinations and everything to try to figure out the world and solve all the problems. And so I just sort of introduce each section with the scriptures from Ecclesiastes to sort of set it in, you know, it's like things that are crooked can't be made straight. And so anyway, I was just, to me, when I was reading the book of, studying Ecclesiastes, it just sort of fit the tone of the book I was trying to write. That so much of what we do is a broad treadmill. And if you read the last scripture, I think the last scripture I use is the last scripture in the book of Ecclesiastes. And like the preceding verses are basically saying, you know, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is loving the Lord and following His commandments.
And I think that, I'm not gonna find it right now where it comes, but I think
But
that is.
that's sort of like, that's what we use, that's what I use to introduce part 4 of the book.
And there's a part, if I'm not mistaken, where, because it stood out in the parts when you would open the parts with it, but there was
Yes.
another part where it came up, not so much quoting it, but the wording of it. It was almost an interpretation in the character's discussion.
And
And I was struck by that.
yeah.
How much do you think that taking that course, reading that while you were writing this book, altered where things may have gone? Or did you already, so when you set out to write, I guess, let me ask that question first. Do you have a full plan outline, or do you start to veer off that?
You know, I'm a combination of a planner and a pantser.
Okay.
I have a basic idea of what the character arc needs to be. I know where I want the story to end, and I have my wow moments figured out, and I just sort of have to get the story from here to here. And so what I'll end up doing is I'll plan the next 3 chapters, and so but then I'll get to this point and go, okay, I got to get these guys from here to here. You know, what's going to happen? And so it really is, my character arc drives the plot almost more than the plot drives the character arc. I know what I want the characters to experience. I know where I want them to end up. And so then the plot sort of kind of go like this. And I typically have, so I have the big wow moment figured out. I had that scene figured out like 6 months before I even really got started. Like, wow, that would be awesome. How can I put together a story around that? So I think as I'm writing it, you know, it's hard. I can't really say that my understanding of Ecclesiastes drove the storyline so much as it is. The book ended up on a note that I kind of wanted it to end up on, and I was able to pick scriptures out that fit what I'd written. So I can't really say that I used one to plan the other. It just sort of kind of worked out that way.
And I guess it wasn't even so much planning. Do you think that immersing yourself in that book while you're writing this book might have unconsciously driven any of the pieces?
Okay, I would even go so far to say that my Christian worldview, my biblical worldview influences my writing directly. So I was asked once by a book club, this is probably 20 women, all in their 80s, all attended Baptist churches in Birmingham, and they'd been together for like 20 years, and they asked me a very insightful question. They said, do you write Christian fiction, or are you a Christian that writes fiction? And I said, I'm a Christian that writes fiction. And so like the bad guys in here, I have a scene where the chief bad guy is sort of describing how he manipulates people.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically said, well, that's kind of how Satan works. And so I definitely, my worldview definitely influences my stories and my characters, and my kind of a battle of good against evil, dealing with our fallen nature and how some people are able to. And another thing that you'll see, especially in the first book, is the desire is for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom from not freedom from the weight of expectations that others put on us. The freedom to fail, and so that definitely is consistent with my biblical worldview.
And I think the freedom, I can see some areas in here that play into the freedom too, because in the political grab, you have this other father and son, the Sanchez, and
Yes.
there becomes a political question of who controls whom.
Right.
And you can see there's a push for freedom there,
Mm-hmm.
and I see another push for freedom in the daughter when she comes into the scene, Rebecca.
Yes. She wants to be free of the her deadbeat dad controls her trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and she wants to be free of his meddlesome ways and the fact that he's frankly inattentive. The political drama, it's nothing new. It's who controls it. Is it the king or the kingmaker?
Mm-hmm.
And our ultimate bad guys are the kingmakers, the ones that have the money, and they are the ones that are using the kings they set up as their puppets. And so we have this battle. The king, the young Johnny Dunsmore, who's the governor, wants to be the president. He's trying to break free of the kingmaker, and the kingmakers are like, we made you, we can break you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have that battle that's going on.
And there is an interesting scene where he tries to assert himself and really gets told quickly,
Yes.
you have no control.
You are, yes, we own you.
We own you, and
We own you.
we have the means to tear you down.
Yes.
Based on your background, how hard, and I know you allude to that in some of the notes that come at the back of the book,
Right.
how hard was it to write some of the legal and the trust and all of the financial pieces that play into here? Because there's some depth into
Good.
a lawyer looking at that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was a lawyer for 2 years,
Okay.
and then business world. But in the business world, I started businesses, and so I was my lawyer. I could take it to a point where I needed a real live lawyer. So the law has never intimidated me. I get it. I understand it. Or I like to say, I know what questions to ask. I've long since forgotten the answers, but I at least still know what questions to ask. And so frankly, writing the financial part and writing the legal part, that's pretty easy. The hard part for me is not getting too granular, not getting, just going too far into it. Now, when I read a legal thriller or a financial thriller, I can't stand it when the author dumbs it down and says something, that's just. And so I tried to be as authentic as possible in how this would really play out. Now, I was not a litigator.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a litigator. And so I do take some liberties as an author and in a courtroom scene or two, just because it still needs to be an enjoyable read. And frankly, the practice of law is boring. It's not like what you see on TV. It is boring. I guess criminal law is altogether different, but and so I do make it maybe more interesting than it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried to be accurate with, and so we have some offshore banking.
Mm-hmm.
We have some people hiding assets, and who's the true beneficial owner. And I had to do some research on it. My stint as a lawyer took place between 1988 and around 1991. I was a bankruptcy attorney. We represented primarily lenders. This was during the S&L crisis. So all the stuff about the collapse of the S&Ls, I was familiar with that because that was brief period of time when I was practicing law. So
And-
that,
and-
that I understood.
For there's what starts, I guess the first domino that goes into play is predatory lending and where they're attacking people who can't even afford to keep their houses, which brings Walker in.
Right. So the Dunsmore family, the son is the governor, their family owns an SNL and owns all of these businesses that prey on the poor. You know, the lending operations that charge usury rates, but they're all owned by trusts and such that are all domiciled in the Caribbean, and so no one knows that the governor of South Carolina is the beneficial owner of all these companies that prey on the poorest people in their state. The imagery I like to use, what I use in the back of the book, is that basically the whole backstory, the whole story of Johnny Dunsmore and his brother Randall is set up to run a nonprofit, which they try to paint themselves as these wonderful people who do nothing but care for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
And so young Walker, as the attorney, begins to pull on the threads and the whole tapestry of the lies that support this backstory of this wonderful family all begins to fall apart.
And the family then begins to bear their
And
teeth
then
and
they
attack.
push back. Yes.
I'm assuming from what I gathered in here and how much it came that book 2 is largely set in the Caribbean. So
Correct.
how did that research go, putting a book?
Well, that was fun. We went to the Caribbean.
Okay.
Yes, and so we come back and she's like, where's the next story?
But it was during COVID, it was nobody traveling, and it was like just nice for us to get out, but, you know, we were tested everywhere, and
Yeah, we went down to the Bahamas because I needed places to have scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and get a taste for what it was actually like. So we went. Where did we go? We went to Nassau.
we were just in Nassau, but we had a tour all
Yes.
around the island
Right.
to get like the neighborhood that Sean Conroy had a home, and
Right.
the really wealthy parts, and then we went to the really poor parts, and we just saw the whole island.
Yeah, I told our
And
guide, I said,
it
I'm
was
writing
fabulous.
a book. I want to see everything, and there are scenes.
Because there's
that take
scenes in
place.
here that take place there.
Yeah, there's scenes.
But
There is. There's a
Yeah,
flashback.
there's
Yes.
well, there's a flashback,
Nigel.
and
Yes.
they go there in their investigation where they start
Yes.
looking at some
That's
of
where
the
it starts.
Yes.
So in the second book, so Eli, I'm not giving away too much. I think it's on the back of the jacket, back of the book. Young Eli in the first book, he's falsely accused of this murder, and he has to flee, and he's able to make it to the Bahamas. I'm not going to tell you how. That's a big part of the story, but he's there, and he's there for 5 years. So we went there, and we did have a great guide, and a lot of scenes take place at the what's it called? The country club. I forget the name of the country club. It's a real country club,
Okay.
and you cannot get past the guard. I mean, this is a gated community on steroids, and the houses behind it are all extraordinary. Every boat's bigger than the next one. Well, our guy was able to bribe the gate. So we got back there. We're driving along, and so I got to go. I walked into the clubhouse of the club and everything. We saw everything, and so I said, "This is perfect." So that was our research.
That was the research.
That was the research for a lot of this. And there's a restaurant in the second book where a lot of scenes take place, and that restaurant is real. We ate there, and then there's in Blood Rivalry, Eli, we find out is a rock star chef, and the inspiration for his restaurant was that restaurant in Nassau.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I will have to add too, because when you're in that restaurant, this struck me because, and aside from teaching, which I left out, I've spent 30 years bartending as well. But there's a great little Bondy and Fleming moment in here when
Yes.
you say the bartender who was usually cleaning the glass filled in the rest 3 measures of Gordon's, 1 of vodka, half a measure of Quina Lillet, stirred and not shaken, which I was like, kudos, that's correct.
Right.
So you had a
Yes.
nice little nod
Yes.
in there,
He
correcting.
did live there. Sean Conroy lived,
Sean Conroy did
had a
live in that
home
neighborhood.
in that neighborhood, yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. And did you pick up the other place he appeared? Sean Connery makes an appearance in the book.
No,
not in that book. I'm sorry, in the second.
I was gonna say I missed that
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, in the second book, there's a
Oh, I'll have to look for
there's a
that.
character. You go, wait a minute,
He
that
seems-
might be Sean Connery. Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting because the
The
Bond
actual
movies
way
got
to
it
make
completely
it is-
wrong. You
right.
don't shake it.
Right, you stir.
You stir it.
Right. Yes.
we were speaking out there a little bit before we came in, and I know that I've spoken to a number of friends, and I have a chance to meet a lot of people here in publishing. How would you say, what advice would you have with an editor and editing and the process of finding a good editor?
The process of finding a good editor. Well, again, you go online. There are websites, there are platforms where you can go and you can you'll see the bios of a bunch of editors, and they'll tell you the genres that they like to work in, and they'll show you the books that they have edited. So you can get, okay, I've written historical fiction. This person has done 12 books around World War II. That's going to be a good editor for me. And so you can read through them, and you'll make an educated guess as to whether or not this editor is going to be a person who can edit your book. And then what happens is you'll send them 5 pages or so, and then they'll edit those 5 pages and send them back to you and go, this is kind of what it would be like working with me. And that's how I picked my first editor. And then that editor helped me with the second book.
Okay.
Now, here we are, 2026, sometime around 2022, after I had published my first 2 books, I met a company in the Charleston area, and they provide a suite of services to help a self-published author get published, and from cover design to editing. And so when you sign up with these companies, they have their editors. Now, the reality is all these editors are independent contractors. No company has, other than like Random, et cetera. By and large, all these companies all have, they're like independent contractors. So I don't know who edited my 3rd book, because the company won't give me the name because they're afraid I will go around them directly. So I get all this feedback, and I just called the person Bob. For all I know, it was Barbara. I have no idea. But the editor of my last book was excellent. So it was a very positive experience. But to some extent, it's a little bit of a crapshoot, especially when you've never written a book or been edited. You get a sense that the help is helpful, but you don't know, is this person a good editor, is this person a great editor, because you don't have any experience working with an editor. But my 3rd book, I had now written 3 books, and so I was getting more and more, experienced in doing this, and so yes, my editor for this last book I thought was excellent.
Because you even mentioned that idea of them giving you the feedback earlier when we were talking about this character is not likable, and you need to find a way to make them more
More relatable.
more relatable.
More interesting, frankly, just more interesting. Yeah, you want to be able to invest in your characters. You want to either root for them or you want to hate them, but you can't be bored with them.
And on that same thing, while we're on the process away from the book, as an independent publisher, as an independent writer, what would you say is some of the hardest parts for you through this process?
Marketing and selling the book, by and large, is the hardest. Writing the book is not easy, but it's a process you have control over. Then all of a sudden you try to convince people to buy your book, and it's hard. And part of it is because the great thing about self-publishing is that now anyone can write a book. The worst part about self-publishing is now anyone can write a book. And we've all read books by major publishing houses that frankly weren't that good. And we've all read, of course, fantastic books. The same thing can be said for self-publishing. We've all read books that were self-published. Well, it's a great book. But there's a lot of books out there that maybe just aren't that good. And so there's like 10 million new books published a year. I mean, this is a proverbial hunt for the needle in the haystack. So the challenging thing about being a self-published author, as I joke with you, is you're also talking to the sales and marketing team. And there's 2 routes. There's online and there's bookstores. And bookstores is you pound the street, you walk into the store and you try to convince them to carry your book. Online, social media, which frankly to me feels a bit inauthentic, and then advertising on Facebook and Amazon and everywhere else you can, and it's difficult. There's a silver bullet. If I had it, I'd write a book and be a billionaire. There is no silver bullet. There are best practices, and frankly, they don't work that well.
Okay.
So, it's definitely a challenge. Now, if you have 30,000 followers on Instagram before you write a book, that's a great place to be.
Right.
You've got built-in reader base, but if you're kind of building up your reader base while you're writing, it's a slog. And so a lot of the conventional wisdom is a self-published author. I like to joke, right now, writing is a hobby for me. I'd like it to become a vocation.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really begin to make, a lot of sales until you get to like maybe book 5 or 6.
Okay.
Because if they like one book, they go back and they've got 4 more to buy.
Mm-hmm.
When I had one book, that was it. Well, now I've got 3. So if someone likes it, so I've seen that sales of this book are pulling along sales. So it works. It's a timely endeavor.
Okay.
You know, TJ, this reminds me, I would go to my brother Pat's events, Waters Wide, Great Santini, and there'd be a crowd like this in the room. This is it. This would be it. And of course, The Prince of Tides changed everything. And all those other books sold like crazy because of The Prince of Tides.
Yeah.
You know, you just keep, slogging away.
It's a slog.
You know, you're authentic. You talk about this book and you make me want to buy it, and so
Good.
you keep on doing that. You're going to be fine.
Thank
You know?
you. I appreciate it.
Is there a 4th book?
There is. It's somewhere on my desk.
Is it gonna stay with some of
Therein
these characters?
lies part of the challenge. In some respects, these 3 books could be a series, and I could wrap it up right here. And so I've got several different storylines. I can continue to work with Walker and Eli.
Okay.
Continue to work with them. Herein lies part of the challenge with a series. You gotta have change.
Right.
You gotta have character arc. Well, you can't. It's hard to keep putting the same characters through the ringer again and again and again. So, like, if you read private detective stories, character doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
You like the character. It's the world that changes. So something's got to change. So I'm at a point with these guys to where we know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
The change has to come in, a change of the facts of the world. So that's a different kind of book.
Okay.
And so I'm not, and so I've got a couple of stories around Walker, really.
Okay.
And then, so the other books the other stories that I'm contemplating are all brand new characters.
So that's your decision now, is do you stay in this family,
That's the decision.
or do you pursue?
Correct, right, or do I pursue, and write a book set in today's world, potentially.
Okay.
Or maybe you could write about Nigel. You like Nigel.
We like Nigel. Nigel is the.
There's some characters.
Nigel was a fun character.
He's a fun character.
He's a great character.
And he knows quite a bit, like,
Yeah. So
he's
you
got
could
his
take
hands on-
him off.
Yes.
on a side
On a
quest.
side note.
Yes. So I do. There are a couple of side characters that could have their own stories.
Okay.
So,
Bring back Babcock.
bring back. She's dead.
Yeah.
She's dead.
Sorry.
There's always a Ouija board.
So did you read it?
Exactly.
Did you read the first one?
Before I give it
Just my
over
comment, yeah.
to the
I love
audience,
Mrs. Babcock.
the one question that struck me, because I will say, when you said you were trying to, it is a page turner. It was definitely at night, trying to squeeze in a few more pages or early morning. It's a very visual book in how it paints the story and it moves along.
Good.
The glory of someday someone wanted to make a movie.
Yes, well, that'd be great.
Is there a scene you would love to see on the screen the way you wrote it?
That's a good question.
Because there were a few, I'm like, wow, I'm like,
Is it mainly in Charleston?
it's 3/4 of it are in Charleston, maybe even a little more.
yeah,
It's
it's-
largely all Charleston.
It's Charleston, and there's
choices.
some flashback. I'll say flashback. So it's part 2 and part 3 are set in the past, and we have some scenes that take place in D.C.
Mm.
In Georgetown. A couple of the characters go to Georgetown, so we do have some scenes set there. Wow, that's a good question. One I can imagine being on the screen.
I figured the Who's going to play a character is too easy, so I was really curious to see
If there's one
what scene jumped out without giving.
Well, I mean, again, I'm thinking of one, but I'm giving it away. I can't tell you.
Right.
I can't use that as the answer. That would be a good scene. there's a scene that I think is kind of funny. So again, there's some politics involved, and there's a scene that takes place back in like 1960-ish, 1961, something like that. They're at a fundraiser for they're at a political fundraiser, and so you have all these political people that are there, and there's a reference to Strom Thurmond, and someone says, so this is set in 1960, and someone says, "Oh, his days are numbered. He'll never win re-election." I think that would be kind of a funny.
That'd be a funny
scene
scene to
to
see play out. And I thought, unfortunately, with the way politics in the sense of people in power have played out through the South in recent days, the Dunsmore family was very relatable.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just I basically it's kind of like we're so used to bad politicians now. We're so used to it's like these characters. Colin, he's just a selfish narcissist, and it's just power.
Yep.
Right, it's just power. And so that was kind of those kind of characters, frankly, are almost easy to write because we've got so many examples, and at the risk of being a stereotypical, they're just power hungry. Yeah.
And then my last question to you will be on that note. It was very interesting seeing. So you had Walker chasing a legacy that may or may not have been true that he created of his older brother and where he fell, but then you also had Randall trying to achieve some kind of recognition, being considered the throwaway son.
Yeah. So Walker and Eli come from their father, who makes a brief appearance the third book. He's a good guy. He's a good man. He's a good husband. He's a good father. Randall and Johnny, they are twins, and Johnny is the golden child, and Randall is the completely forgotten one. And so that's where we get into the nature and nurture argument, because they had the same parents, and so why is one of them just sort of that magnetic personality that just draws people to you? That's Johnny, and Randall is the easily forgotten one. They were, I'm trying to think where I was going with that explanation, but they were.
It seemed, I was saying, it seemed like in some ways you had a brother in both families that was chasing something.
Blood rivalry. So blood refers to family, not blood. And so the rivalry between Walker and Eli, it's a healthy one. Sibling rivalries, I have two brothers, one older, one younger. And so rivalries can be healthy. Brothers can still fight with each other, and then rivalries can be unhealthy. And so the rivalry between Walker and Eli, ultimately at the end of the day, was a healthy one. Although Walker wanted to escape his older brother's shadow, his older brother Eli did nothing to cast it. Right. He was never really at fault in all of this. These were just the circumstances that this was his life, and he had to deal with it. Whereas with Randall and Johnny was an ass. Johnny treated Randall like dirt, and Randall then played the part of the victim. And so their rivalry was very unhealthy and very destructive, and we see how that played out in the story.
Fantastic. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I want to ask if anybody has any questions.
I just want to say, regardless of whether you're a traditionally published author or self-published, you always have to get out there and hustle your own book.
And and I learned that. So when I was facing the decision as to how, this first book, the first book was published in 2020, and so I'm trying to figure out, now I've written it, now what do I do? And some of the research that I did was that, unless you're a top tier author, you are going to be promoting your book.
And they're still promoting their books. I mean, you look at how busy our Charleston Literary Festival is now. They're still out there stumping.
They're still out there stumping it. So it has become, which is another reason why I just decided I'm going to be self-published, because if I had been patient enough to wait to be published, you never know when that day's gonna happen. And so I decided to be self-published, and you're right. And, you know, unless you're Grisham and your books just fly off the shelf, then you're out there stumping.
Has the independent bookstores been supportive in Charleston too?
In Charleston, Buxton Books has been very supportive. The news store in town, Lady Bird, they carry my books. Main Street Books in Somerville has been very good. Litchfield Books has been very supportive. Those are the four that in the immediate vicinity that carry my books.
Because it's hard, you know, for them, because they only have so much shelf space,
Exactly.
and unless
I get it.
they know you, you know, and that's
I
I always say to authors, get to know them. Get
I
to
don't
know
fault the
them.
bookstores.
Yeah.
I don't. I get it. They got limited real estate
Yeah.
and they gotta move books.
Yeah.
And one of the things I don't like is when they stick me on the local author
Exactly.
section.
Yeah.
Right, local author.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I get
Yeah.
it. You know, Pat Conroy's a local author, but that's a little different. A little different. And so I'm like, don't put me there. Stick me in the, you know, the
Yeah.
fiction suspense thriller shelf or you
Yeah.
know. So I get it. I don't fault them. There's no bitterness. It's a reality. You have to deal with it. But it's getting easier because when I say I'm at this store, they go, oh.
Yeah.
So it never gets easy, but it gets easier.
And I just, you know, my comment was more to, you know, if you don't know a bookstore owner first,
Yeah,
get to know them first before you ask.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're
Yeah.
just another
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
off the street
Yeah.
wanting some of their valuable space.
I had a question, so my husband keeps interrupting.
Oh,
I quit thinking about this, so I've heard people go up to authors and get upset when they dropped somebody or is not writing about, a character anymore, so if you decide to go a different direction, do you think you've got a way to hear from your people that read all 3 books to find out if they really want you to keep going, or if they get upset with you, will you just go ahead and write 2 books and
You
just
know,
keep going
I
without?
hadn't even thought about that. I didn't know I had that many readers.
When you do something they don't like, you'll find out.
Yeah, I think so.
Like drop your,
You know, that's very true.
Yeah.
those characters, I hear them fussing at people, like, why?
Well, everybody's already upset Ms. Babcock.
Yeah, he-
Yeah.
We lost a favorite.
I know.
And we do have 4 bookstores now, I think, because the 4th one is opening up, I read on Facebook today,
Mhm.
just here.
Yeah.
in-
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was, the Buford bookstore,
I like them.
they carry my books.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and, so they would be the one in this area.
Well,
No, I
and
hadn't thought
Nevermore
about that.
could,
I do have some people that have, I mean, you know, I've gotten some good reviews online, and so those are always nice to read. And so people said, oh, keep writing, so those are always things. It's always encouraging to read reviews of people you never met.
And it's not just people, because when I was looking and doing some research going through this, there are some reviewers who've
Yeah.
published very good reviews of
Yep.
your books too.
Yep.
And there are people I didn't mean to
Yeah,
pronounce.
please.
Now, I know, I heard myself, and I tried to correct that, but I meant it's not a person on the bottom of the Amazon
At
page.
the boss level.
Exactly.
I don't know how people get to all those people to follow them, but I mean, I'm not a TikTok or anything like
Yeah.
that, but I do see a lot of people on Substack and different things, and they have quite a few followers.
Yes, and Substack is a way, you know, the thing about writing a book is you won't hear from me again until I write the next book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can find time to post, Substack is a way to stay in front of people that go, I like this person's writing. Because then you gotta figure, what are you gonna Substack about? and what are you gonna post? Well, this is what I had for breakfast today. And so I post occasionally on Substack.
I just thought like you can interview the characters in your book, you made them up,
Oh,
right?
that's
They're
not
not,
a
they
bad
don't
idea.
exist, but,
That's- I kinda like that. So I have 2 Substacks. One's on American history, because I do give walking history tours around Charleston. And so every now and then I'll write something. And then one's on my Christian worldview, and so I'll write things on that. So those are sort of 2 Substacks. And I don't post nearly as much as I need to. But again, it's, I need,
So many hours in a day.
Days in a week.
all the young people used to tell me that if old people get up on TikTok or something and do something stupid, you'll get zillions of hits. And I'll play the ukulele down in Florida, and we were like, what can we do? You know, it was all a voting thing, we were trying to come up with like the Angry Grannies or something, and we couldn't come up with anything stupid we thought anybody would watch. But if you do something interesting, young people might, I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes they
the,
just get stuck on you.
TikTok is young,
Mhm.
and so I've sent my books out to influencers, and so you'll get, they'll hold your book up, and they'll open it, and they'll say something about it, and I'm like, okay, thanks.
I'm just
That's
curious.
hilarious.
I appreciate it. I think it was one of those things that TikTok was new,
Mhm.
and there were some, and it's primarily young women, cause they were the ones that are more socially inclined to begin with, and most books in this country are bought by women. And so there were a few of them that right out of the gate were having huge success. Well, now all these TikTokers think that they're, you know, the next great, you know, editor, reviewer, and they wanna start charging for this. Well, I'm not paying you $75 to hold my book cover up in front of your camera. I don't care that you have 20,000 followers, because first of all, I don't even know if those are real followers.
Mhm.
So I think there was this hit, and it was like, everyone said, this is the hot new way.
Yeah.
And that window's already shut. So I don't know what the next hot new way is.
Book clubs won't do it unless your book clubbers are influencers.
It's hard to get in front of book clubs.
Yeah,
It's hard to get in front of them.
it just interests me, I know nothing about this, I just.
Well, at this point, if we wanna go and,
If you're
I
interested,
know I wanna
we've got
buy one
some
of
books
those so
over
we
here.
can be at the desk. I can edit throughout too.
I
I tried to turn it off, I don't think it did.